Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast, For Women, by Women. The goal of our podcast is to start meaningful conversations with women who are making a difference in their respective industries and paving the way for young women to follow in their groundbreaking path. The founders of this club, Sabrina Canali and Tiffany Ang, created the Women in Business Club in January of 2021. Our mission is to empower and inform young women about gender inequality in the workplace so we as a community can strive to make a change.
Today's episode features Patricia Koetzner, the Managing Director of Equity Sales and Trading at Seibert Williams Shank.
First off, thank you so much for being on our podcast. We are so honored to have you here. With all of your experience in the finance industry, you are such an inspiration to many young women in our club. First off, how did you know you wanted to pursue a career in business, specifically finance?
Well, I'll be completely honest that originally my plan was to become an attorney, and I also like the idea of public service, public office, not at a huge level, but at the time. So I graduated from the University of Maine with a public administration degree. So I had an interest in politics. I had an interest in law, so I figured it was a good foundation if I ever wanted to seek public office. And it was interesting because I had this going on. I was signed up for the LSAT. I had everything kind of prepared. And then I went over spring break to my friend's father's office at the World Trade Center. And I'm there on the trading floor at Cantor Fitzgerald. And I'm just kind of soaking it all in. I was like, wow, this is really exciting. And I would never say I was a math student, but I was good at math, and I took a lot of math classes because they were easier for me where I didn't have to study as much as from the other classes. So I had a lot of math in me from a background perspective. So any of my liberal arts classes or elective classes, I would select math sometimes versus other subjects. And struggled with accounting, so I knew I wasn't going to be an accountant. Anyway, so I was there, and I said, well, this is kind of cool. And the movie Wall Street kind of was out around the same time, maybe a year or two before, so I had kind of watched that. I'd seen that movie, and I'm like, well, this is kind of fun. So I didn't realize that movie was pretty good description as what it kind of really looked like on a trading desk. So I left there, went back to school, graduated, and then an opportunity came to me over the summer about maybe want to look at take my Series 7 and give Wall Street a try before I would take the test. So that's what I did. So I ended up working for a very small firm called Royce Investment Group. Now, if you've ever seen the movie The Boiler Room, have you ever watched that movie? Put it on your list. Yeah, right? So that movie is based on firms like Sterling Foster, Royce Investment Group, Strackmont Oakmont, and a few of these other Long Island firms that kind of had a very different business structure, very aggressive structure. So if you watch that movie, that'll give you a good idea of what I did for the first 3 months of my career on Wall Street. So started with that and passed my Series 7, and I guess the rest is history. I didn't go to law school, I didn't take my LSAT. I wanted to give it a college try, so I ended up working for Royce, but then I ended up getting a job at Oppenheimer and Company in what they call their Power Broker program. So it was 30 people. I was the only woman, which is going to start becoming a theme, the only woman out of 30, and it was coming out of University of Maine. I was definitely at the lower tier of the colleges that were at the table, and nor did I play a Division I sport either at the table. So it was a very much zero demographics. It was completely white guys who went to big schools or played the big sports teams in their colleges, and then me. So anyway, I did that for a couple of months, and I ended up, kind of taking a different path to start, and then I left there. I went to another smaller firm where I did syndicate new issues, so on IPOs, and anytime a company is a company that wants to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange or be listed, as they would say, you go through a process called underwriting, and within that underwriting process is a group that supports the underwriting process where you're kind of effectively working with teams to trade and buy and sell the new issues, IPOs, initial public offerings. And so I did that first for the first 3 or 4 years of my career. And then a very interesting thing happened. This is one thing I was gonna say. Sometimes you have to be at the right place at the right time. So I was working for this older gentleman, this guy Bradley Sweeney, who's myself and Brad. I was the assistant syndicate analyst, and he was the syndicate manager, and it was really just the two of us. It was a firm called Dominic & Dominic, which was owned by the Kennedy family, so there is some history there. And they used to be humongous in the 70s, and they used to actually clear through a lot of firms like Morgan Stanley, and so it was like this. But after a while, they've sold off a lot of that business, and they really just kept a certain little pocket of business. And anyway, so big snowstorm. Bradley's out of the office. The entire trading desk, nobody really can get in. I was fortunate to be living in the city at the time, on the Upper East Side, and I was fully licensed. I had my 7, my 63, and Paul Kennedy, the president of our firm, came in and he said, really short-handed in the trading floor. I know you have your license, and would you mind going back there and sitting with the desk? And I said, well, I've never done that before. He's like, you were a broker for a while, Patty. You can go and do that. I'm like, okay. So anyway, so Bradley wasn't coming in. There was no syndicate market that day. And I remember it was a Friday. So Fridays are usually light on the syndicate side. I remember going back there and sitting on the desk. And at the time, and this was, I'll say it's 95, so 95, 96, probably 95, I guess I'm trying to think, 95 or 96. Anyway, but it was separated. You had, so the listed, which was stuff that trades on the New York Stock Exchange, and stuff that trades on the NASDAQ, or they would really more or less call it over-the-counter back then, were two separate desks. They weren't one and the same. So they asked me to sit on the NASDAQ desk and help that team. So when I first sat down, I was like, okay. They're like, all right, they're going to buy stock, they're going to sell stock. I'm like, all right, so I'll never forget it. Like, I sat down at first, like, okay, just answer the phone and just write stuff down. I'm like, okay. And then this one woman who was probably about 105 pounds wet, this woman, Nancy, and she said to me, she goes, all right, Pat, it's real simple. When they're saying the price of the stock, the price first, then the quantity, they're a buyer. When they say the shares first, then the stock, then the price, they're a seller. So there's no buying and selling. It's bidding and offering. And I was like, oh, one more time? And she said, again, she's like, and she's like basically screaming at me, like, come on, let's go, I don't have time to train you, we got stuff to do here. She's like, price, stock, quantity, you're a buyer. Shares, price, shares, stock, price, seller. I'm like, okay. So I literally wrote that down on my desk.
And you still remember it perfectly now?
Then it became like second nature to me. But I wrote it down because I'm like, I'm gonna mess this up. And I had like, all right. So if they say, and I wrote literally, and then I started answering the phone. I'm like, okay. And they're like, all right, like 24.5 for 1,000. I'm like, okay, they were a buyer. All right. So so it was almost like a delayed reaction, and it was really and that was in the morning. But by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I didn't need my cheat sheet anymore. Mm-hmm. And I started to realize that, okay, they're like 25.5, bid for 1,000 Intel. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting it now. And then I started just writing it down and taking, so 4 o'clock comes and goes, and I'm like, all right, that went by really fast. And then after like the lunchtime, I was like, oh, that was kind of fun actually too. I kind of like this. It's fast paced. It's a little better than me writing tickets at my desk and putting on commissions and being done with my job by 11 o'clock. Basically, I can move fast enough and be done. And I remember going back to my desk to clean up, and Paul Kennedy comes out of his office, and it sounds like maybe it's like 4:30, 4:45. He's like, Patricia, do you have a minute? Can you come into my office? I'll never forget, I'm at my desk, I'm like, oh my God, I must have messed something up.
Switch up the card.
Oh my God, he's gonna fire me. I just got my apartment. I was like having like anxiety. He's like, no, it's all good. Just come in the office when you have a minute. I'm like, I go in the ladies' room, I come out of the ladies' room, I'm like, all right, I guess, I mean, so, all right, whatever. So I go, I sit down, I remember he said to me, he goes, Pat, he goes, what did you think about today? And I said, it's fun. And he's like, did you like it? I said, no, I thought it was a lot of fun. I said, I'm a little nervous because I think maybe I messed something up. And he goes, it was quite the contrary. He goes, you picked it up extremely quick, and they want to see if you have an interest in maybe joining the team. Because, and then I didn't know, I know now what I didn't know then is that most people, it's either you're a trader or you're not, and I know that sounds like a silly statement, but in a high-pass environment, when it's phone calls and you're answering, you have to remember multiple things at the same time. Some people have that skill set, and others just do not have that skill set. And I didn't realize it then, but apparently I picked it up very quickly, and you can see when someone can naturally pick it up, and that was it. So then it was kind of like one of these things where I always felt like I was just, that I started, and then now that I look at my career, I've had 3, distinct careers, really. I kind of did like syndicate to start, really small, and then I was a NASDAQ market maker from 95 until basically 2002. And I really traded, made markets in the sense that, you have so if you have a stock that's listed on the exchange, and let's say it's not a New York Stock Exchange stock, let's say, so if someone lists stock on the New York, there's a gentleman on the floor or a woman, and they're called a DMM, but at the time they were called a specialist, so you'd have one person that would manage all the orders, like buy and sells. And if it was a NASDAQ name, there could be multiple buyers and sellers, multiple specialists called market makers within a stock, so that's what I did. And you manage a book. So you would have all your buy orders and all your sell orders, and the closer you were to the bid, you would be a buyer at that level. And the closer you were to the offering, which is, do we know about, is everyone familiar with a bid at NASCAR when you look at a stock in this group? No. Okay. So anytime you look at like the TV and you see like news on stocks, there's always a price that there's the best price you can buy a stock at and the best price you can sell a stock at. And whatever those two levels are, they call that the inside market. So it's either, if you were a market maker and let's say you were a seller, you would try to have orders on the ask side. And if I was a buyer, I'd be on the bid side because I'm trying to buy and I'm trying to sell. So it's kind of, anyway, I won't get to, maybe I told Sabrina that maybe I'll have the group come and we'll go to the floor and then we'll do a little more of a deeper dive. But what was the other? All right, then I did that for a while, and then there was a really big regulation that came down in the it was around 2003, 4. It was called Reg NMS, and it really changed the way stocks trade. And so basically, you went from having like fractions. So you probably remember that. So when we were young, like it was fractions. So stocks trade in like eighths, like an eighth, 3/8, a half, 5/8, 7/8, and then it'd be like $1. So like just like you would use like when you're using like your measurements at home, like like half a cup or whatever. Those same fractions would be the difference between $1 and $2, and they would call that a spread. Basically, that was the difference. And then they went to 16ths. So again, the same thing between $1 and $2, all these things. But then eventually they eventually went to decimalization, which is when they did that, it really impacted a ton of people. You had 9/11, you had decimalization kind of happen within a very short window of each other, and when that happened, it really eliminated a lot of jobs. And in that same time period, a lot of the stocks and all the phone calls that I was talking about really became more automated. So you had electronification, you have all these different things happening at the same time. And when that happened, I was no longer making markets anymore because in order to make a market, you really just had to take an exorbitant amount of risk to make money because all the spreads, you used to be able to buy and sell something and maybe make a half a point. So you could probably, what does that mean? So I can make 50 cents, so I could sell 1,000 shares and make 50 cents. And And that would be like $500. That means, or $50. I'm trying to lose my brain here. 1,000 would be $50.
For each share, 50.
For each share. So it's really, it would add up. And so with decimalization, that didn't exist anymore. So then I had an opportunity to go to a bank. And at that point, I no longer made markets. And also in that same time period, it didn't matter if you were trading NASDAQ or trading New York Stock Exchange, it became one market. So with decimalization, electronification, the spreads reducing, the markets reduced. They're still separate places, the NASDAQ and the NYSE, but they became one market. And then when that happened, I started covering accounts where I started charging commissions for trading versus making the difference between the markets. I know I'm talking a lot. Am I making? So what I basically that's what I've done. So I did that for a while. So that's where I am now. And then I've been in the diversity space. So I was at a big bank for 8 years, but now I'm at a firm that's owned by an African American woman, Suzanne Shank, and we're an investment bank. And I was at another firm before that, another African American owned firm, and so I've been in the diversity space for almost 12 years now. But doing the same thing I was doing at Barclays, but at a smaller firm. So, syndicate, market making, and then this, I would call it institutional sales and trading. I also buy back stock. I also trade large lists, which is program trading, more technical stuff, which I can show you guys, if you ever wanted to come to the office, like more of a sit down. So, all right, so that was, does anyone have any questions? I know I just said a ton there.
No, but I just wanted to say, some of us are doing a Bloomberg certification.
Oh, good. Yeah, great.
Yeah, so we're going to be done, I think, this Monday.
Okay, good.
At Loy College.
Okay.
And then we're going to have a graduation.
Great. Bloomberg is an amazing tool. I mean, it's like, so when I first started working, we'd share computers. Okay, so the quotes would be between two people. And now it's like, everyone has their own Bloomberg, which is, by the way, is $3,500 a month per user.
Wow.
And it just keeps going up. And I have a lot of different, and the more you pay for quotes and information, data, it gets like, so my Bloomberg probably is close to $5 a month because I pay for all these different markets, like commodities, futures, options, all this stuff is all, but it's an amazing tool. So I could be at my desk and a client could call and let's say, whatever the stock, we'll say the stock is like Prudential. I was buying Prudential today. I can pull that stock up. So they're saying, okay, Prudential. I'm typing in Prudential in my Bloomberg. Pull it up. I can pull up the chart. I can pull up the news. I can see where it's trading. I can see how much it trades.
So
you can see so much information within 30 seconds. I look like I'm the smartest person in the room because I've got everything literally at my fingertips. So my husband will come out and he'll mention a stock because we've been working from home. He works in the office. And he'll come out and he'll say, oh, I want to buy this stock. And I'll type it up. I'm like, I'm a coworker, Tom. So but I can give him all this information. Really, I'm like, why do you want to buy that stock? And someone told you it was a good stock to buy. I'm like, I don't know about that. So and then I'll give him all this information that I can share with him. It's a really interesting tool, and it's probably a great thing to have on your resume.
Yeah, that's what Miss said too.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is, which is really important to think about as you're beginning your careers, and especially in college and when you get out of college, is I do a lot of networking, and I do a lot of organizations, and I'm involved in a lot of organizations. So I'm the past president of the Security Traders Association of New York. It's a big sentence, otherwise known as STANY. And that is an advocacy, excuse me, I can't speak. That's a group that really, our memberships are really a couple of things. We're traders, equities, fixed incomes, options, exchanges, alternative trading systems, which are trading systems where stocks trade off exchanges. Dark pools, I'm sure you guys have heard that word before. Dark pools are again like alternative trading systems, kind of one and the same, but a little different. That's the group, and then all the technology that's supported in and around these products. So the membership used to be gigantic. So when I was talking before about how before decimalization and penny spreads, there's a lot more people. So we used to have like 3,500 active members. Now we're probably more like 800 to 1,000, depending on the year. And now we're actually having a lot of Bitcoin, stable coins, ETFs. So they're also members as well. But the Bitcoin family are new to the group. And we do a ton of conferences. I just finished a conference. That's when you first reached out to me. I was thinking about inviting you, but I knew it was going to be too much because as a past president, it's like I'm one person away from the presidency. You still have a very active part, and then and through Staney, I also represent New York on the national level, which is the Security Traders Association, and that encompasses 30 affiliates, including Canada and Puerto Rico, and then I represent New York, and that really works with we're in Washington, so we'll meet with congressional committees, congressmen, senators, staffers, and which is interesting because now, when I mentioned before that I want to do the public administration, public office. So now it's actually funny now, almost 25 years later, I have a marriage between the two now. So now when I go to Washington, I'll go on the Hill. I'll make visits, I'll make appointments. But yet I still have my background in finance, but I'm also at the same time, I still have this interest in politics, and so it's very interesting. It's really interesting. And then, my firm, I would say, is highly democratic, very close to the mayor's office, the governor, everything in New York. But so that also leads me to meet a lot more Democrats through that. But then also through STA, we also speak with a lot of Republicans. So because all the committees are kind of split down the middle. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But the networking part is something that I do a lot of. So those two organizations, plus I belong to a thing called NASP, which is the National Association of Security Professionals. Now, if anyone in this room is really interested in that, they actually do have a program for women and minorities, and it's called the Fast Track Program. And we have our New York chapter, and that really sponsors a lot of the. You guys are now kind of past it, but they'll go to Goldman Sachs one day a month or 2 days a month after school, and it's kind of like you get into the fold, and it'll take you all through college. But it's all kids, all mostly Catholic schools, I would say, parochial schools and private schools, or some public schools too. But I've seen there's a lot coming out of the school that's in the Bronx. I'm forgetting the what's the name? Not Bishop Malloy. Bishop Malloy's on
Spellman?
That's Spellman.
Carla Spellman.
Used to be the old St. Helena's, but now it's been renamed. What's that?
I lived in the Bronx almost half the time. My son's baseball games. I'm going to the Bronx today after this.
After this?
Yeah.
So I mean,
Just went to another school in St. Mike.
Sometimes I do that, and I belong to this other group, which is the National Organization of Investment Professionals, which is 200 traders, buy side and sell side. That was a really select group. I actually joke all the time that I think I got in the back door because you have Stacey Cunningham, the former president of the New York Stock Exchange. You have all these very, very senior people. So when I go to that, I feel like I'm my son Jack came with me it was 2 weeks ago in DC because he was going to Catholic U to look at some schools, and then I'm trying to explain to Jack, you don't understand, this is like the room. And I'm at the lowest. I'm so you can't be that. I go, all right, Jack. I've been a member since 2014, but I am there is very senior people in this room. So I was trying to, but then the whole thing is, just networking and being involved. So I do all these extra things. I work with 6 guys on my team. I'm the only one that's involved with anything additional outside of work.
That was what Mrs. Crinning was telling you guys about.
So
important networking was.
So important, especially for women. So it makes you then stand out on your desk. I know so many people. So if I remember looking, if someone's looking, what I also do, and it's been kind of almost a running joke now, is I find a lot of people jobs. Mm-hmm. Because I know a lot of people. I'm what they say a natural connector. I connect people. So last year I probably got 3 friends jobs. Mm-hmm. I'm really good at finding younger people jobs, entry level jobs. The joke is I keep saying I'm going to keep working until my sons get out, because then someone's going to help them get jobs. So, and all their friends. So it's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of stress and pressure also at the same time with the job. And the other thing I would say, obstacles, I think was one of your questions, was, you have to have a very thick skin in what I do. and with most of the women in my business do, and I think, and all the women get along really well because we're all of the same mold. It's kind of like, I don't want to say we're like tomboys, but a little bit more like tomboys because you are. I think you're kind of in a you're in a men's situation. So all the jobs I've had recently, so I'm the only one on the team. My firm merged in 2019, so I'm no longer the head of the desk, which honestly has been such a relief off my back for the last 2 years. So I'm the only one there. The youngest and the only woman of 6 people. My prior firm, again, I was the youngest. I managed a team there of 6 people, all women also. At Barclays, we had, in my immediate group, I was the only woman. In the entire big electronic trading group that we had there, we had 3 women, 2 of which were analysts, and then me. And then at Neuberger, again, I was the only trader, then we had 2 kind of junior people. I mean, it's really junior women. And then at Gruntal, I was me and one of the women, only 2 women out of a team of 30. So that's the other thing too. So you have to be comfortable working with men. You have to be super outgoing, but you have to have a thick skin. This whole you guys know what I'm talking about. Not lean in, but the whole
Me too?
you too thing.
Me too.
Me too, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say you have to dance a delicate line about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying, I think the language on the desks has definitely been toned down tremendously from when I first started to where I am now. I mean, it's I don't want to say it's day and night, but it's definitely a factor. But I'd say if you're, might not be the right role for you to pursue, but it is very exciting. There's so many different facets of the business. There's not a ton of seats anymore trading also, so that's the other thing as well. But there's so many other avenues of ETFs, working. I would encourage people to look at working at exchanges because there's so many opportunities within an exchange, and you could start an exchange, get a ton of experience, and then go and work at a brokerage firm, bring in that expertise with you. It's a lot of.
That's amazing. So how do you balance your private life and work life as a successful businessman?
They get up very early in the morning
How
to get
early are we
everything done.
talking?
I don't think I ever really sleep Monday through Friday past 5:30. Every day, very early. When I worked in the city, I left my house before 6 o'clock every day. And I probably didn't come home until after 6 o'clock every day. And that catches up with you. To go to the gym, I'd have to get up at 4:22 to go to the 5 o'clock class before I took the train to go into the city. And then you have to make choices too, unfortunately. I mean, so how did it really work for me? I mean, I have 3 kids. In order to make it really work, I would leave in the morning. No one is awake when I would leave in the morning. So I had to find a solution that worked best for me, and everyone has to find their own solutions as a working mom. I have au pairs I had nannies and au pairs that lived with us. And the hours I was keeping, that's the only way it would work. They would all be asleep, including the babysitter I left in the morning, my husband as well. I mean, all of them were asleep. And then making choices and prioritization, but I think for me, when I had my kids, I had them at the right time because I was able to work really hard. I had my first son the year I turned 32. So at that point, I feel like I already kind of put a lot of time in. And then, where I think if women have kids earlier than that, I don't think they've necessarily put the time in. And the other thing also was, which I've noticed too, with a lot of my friends that worked and stayed working was, it also depends how much you made, right? You can't make, there's no point in working if everything you're making is going to the babysitter. So I think that was an interesting, so when I was making money, it made sense for me to work at the time. Where hindsight is 20/20, and now I get very jealous of my friends that are all teachers, and now I almost have a full pension, and they can retire soon. In the next 2 or 3 years, I'll probably start seeing all my friends who already have their summers off, which I'm so jealous about sometimes. Don't call me from the beach, But yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of time management. Obviously, getting up early. Before COVID, came, I used to be on a plane quite a bit, and the last month of April, I was on a plane 4 times in 6 weeks. So that's all time management and prioritization.
Sorry, just wanted to.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, those are the global ones, sorry.
What else? Let's see.
I think you covered all the questions,
I'm
and
rambling. I tried to include a lot of the stuff you asked me.
you taught us a little bit about the trading. I learned so much.
I actually have a question. Did it take long for you to adjust to like balancing your private life and your work life?
Well, the good thing about it is I didn't have twins, so I had one kid at a time. So as each kid came along, I was able to kind of take a little step from here. The one thing I did know, well, for me anyway, I was like the first one of my friends to have kids. At my, and I have a lot of friends, believe it or not, in the city that didn't really have kids until they were late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. But yeah, and I had so we almost bought a house in Connecticut. But then we had kind of this, as we'd say, that come to Jesus moment where my husband and I are both we really like Fairfield, but there's no family there. There's no support. And then we kind of well, I kept joking with him, I'm not moving back to Boulder where my parents are, and I'm not living, we couldn't really afford Rockville Center, so we ended up finding Malvern where I am, which I think is the best kept secret. It's kind of off the grid. I just love it. And it's great.
It's great. One of my favorite restaurants.
I love it. Oh, I know Antonia well.
Yeah.
Carol. No, it's and that's the whole thing. So you have to think about these things. If you're going to be a working mother, not only do you need to have primary child care, you also need to have a network. So I've come to realize that having a network, and it goes back to the same theory I said before, is just getting involved and knowing people, right? So when I first got to Malvern, I really leaned on my mom as a backup. If I'm running late, or if the au pair's sick, or the baby's sick, and I can't be 2 places at the same time, my mother was right there for me for Thomas, which was fine for her to manage one kid. And my brother lives in Maine, and my sister didn't have any kids at the time. And but then when I got to meet parents at the school, when the kids were in the 3rd grade, the 3-year-old program, I started to meet parents, and we all started kind of helping each other. You just kind of developed this natural network. So the same with work. I was very social, and I just I got involved with the school. I wasn't busy enough. I added that to the list. But those things are. I get involved with a lot of charities. Just again, it's all this networking. But yeah, networking made the balancing and just having a support system. You could always. I was unfortunate. So the security business, we actually, through the STA, we actually changed the rule, but FINRA, which is our regulator, we had a rule in place where it was 2 years. So if you were licensed, or you got all your broker's license, you're 7, you're 63, I have a bunch more, but you had those 2 primary ones. If you left the business for 2 years, if you had a family, and let's say you wanted to stay home for 3 years, 4 years, that's not an option, because you would lose your licenses. So you basically would come back, okay, now I can't get a job, because now I don't have my license. I can't go back to where I was, because I have to be relicensed. So I don't think they really thought about it at the time, but it's incredibly discriminatory against women, because, men aren't necessarily going to be the ones that not always stay home, but the women may want to stay home and have multiple children, so anyway, we just changed it. We were actually able to get it changed through STA, through appealing to committees, to get it changed to 5 years, which makes it less. Because the most frustrating part was you would have all these licenses that you would have to study for, hours, certifications, and yet you would lose them all in 2 years. If, God forbid, you had a child with needs, you had some, these, you don't know what God's going to put in front of you until it happens, right? These things all come up. Your parent could get sick. You have no idea what you can control. And if you were an attorney, you could actually keep your licenses up, because all you had to do is take a continuing ed course online once a year and, okay, check the box. So my girlfriend, who could be out of the business for 10 years, had her children as an attorney, and now she's like, okay, now my kids are in high school, I'm gonna go work again. That wasn't an option for me. So I only took my maternity leaves. So the longest I've ever been outside of work has been during my maternity leaves. And my first job there wasn't a maternity policy. And I'm not that old, so I mean, I like to think I'm not that old, but at 50, I mean, there was no maternity policy in Newburgh Urban. It was only short-term disability. So I was only allowed to take 6 weeks paid, and then I could do non-paid. So that's what I did. I did 6 weeks paid, and then I did a total of basically another month non-paid. Used all my vacation, not knowing what I know now is that then I went back to work, and my son was getting sick all the time, and I'm like taking days off, and I was. But anyway, a very understanding manager with 2 kids of his own. So, but yeah, it's just managing.
Sorry, I have to go.
It's okay.
Nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you.
Can you take a minute to talk to them for a second?
Excuse me. Can I ask you, what does a typical day at work look like?
Sure. So I usually start about 7:30, which is later than it used to be. I used to get in a little bit earlier.
You go into the office?
So I'm working from home right now, but I'm also, I should say I have 2 options. I have a desk in the city on the trading desk. That's kind of like my main desk. But we just opened a Melville office. That I'm the principal of the Melville office, but not running that office really. But that's. So I have 3 desks now: New York City, my house, and there. And right now I have to be there between all the offices, like 2 to 3 days a week. But I can pick where I'm going. Like next week, I'm going to work Melville on Monday. I'm going to work in the city on Thursday, and I'll have to. I'm keeping my desk in the city because I'll have to go in there either through Staney, stuff at the New York Stock Exchange, events. Like I have an event on Thursday, so. Yeah, so I basically start my day. So I get up early. I go to the gym before I work out. I started to realize early on during COVID, I feel like I just couldn't get out of I don't know how people do this, get out of my bed and just go right to my desk. Now I have to have, so I noticed that I have to just do something to wake up first. Either it used to be the commute, it used to be the exercise and the commute. Now I just usually go to the gym, just get myself kind of up, and then I get fully dressed at my desk. I don't put makeup on necessarily. I may not even blow dry my hair until 10 o'clock or whatever. But which I do at my desk, which is my one secret. It's one nice thing about working from home. When you have thick hair, you can let it get almost dry and then blow dry it at like 10 o'clock. Yeah, but if the guys I work with knew I did that, they'd probably I'm literally blow drying my hair, standing at my desk and trading at the same time. Orders out there, I'm like, no mirror, use my screens, I can see off the screen. It's actually really funny. That's my one thing I'm gonna miss when I can't do that anymore. So then get there, read the news, move the markets, turn my Bloomberg on. That's probably the first thing. Turn my trading systems on. I've got 2 of them. Open up my Outlook, check emails. So first thing I do is I get the newspaper. I get old school newspaper. I signed up for this thing where I've been getting this newspaper. I think I did some sort of program. I've been getting it for almost free for the last 3 years. But I also have it online too, Wall Street Journal, and we get the Barron's as well. Read the news, look at the futures, what's going on. If I'm involved in stocks, we do a lot of buybacks. Is when a corporation buys back their shares and reduces what's available to the public. Let's do a ton of those.
That's in the 4th module. Did you guys get up to that yet?
Buybacks?
Yeah.
We're just about to learn about that.
Yeah. So I've been doing buybacks, buying back shares for corporations since 2005. So in that space, I would say I'm definitely a specialist. Do a lot of talking about buybacks, buyback trading strategies, and talk to corporations. It's kind of funny when I think about it now. But so some of my contacts could be a treasurer of a Fortune 100 company, which is it's when you think about it, you think about the name. We all know the name, and you think about the company. You're like, oh, that's kind of. My husband's like, that's kind of cool. Or you're like, or that person that you've kind of seen on TV could be on the group.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're not on the group, but that they're part of the treasury team, like the CFO or whatever company's on. So it's and it's interesting, on a diversity firm, you actually compete head to head with the bulge bracket firms. And it really comes down to performance. So then looking at stocks, and then all right, so the market opens up, I've got my orders out there. Orders come in constantly, nonstop, all day long. Orders are coming in. Try to listen to the client's instructions. A lot of it's now automated, so a lot of Bloomberg chats. I would say I rarely get orders over the phone. I would say I can't even remember the last time I got over the phone. I got emails, but most of the times they come through Bloomberg, or everything is electronic. So there's no more paper tickets. So there's no, like, everything used to be piles of papers all over the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It's about 100% paperless now.
You said it's a Bloomberg chat, is it like an
Bloomberg chat, yeah, so it's IB chat.
Okay.
Yeah, Instant Bloomberg it's called. And that is why everyone is still on Bloomberg. It is like they have this monopoly because it's an amazing tool. Like every single asset manager, every single broker dealer, if you are anybody, anywhere, you have a Bloomberg. And the good thing about Bloomberg is, like, for me, I've been a user for so long, and people have been users for a really long time. They will let you, like, let's say I lost my job. There's no doubt Bloomberg would be like, Patty, you have it for 6 months. Because I've been paying for so many years,
Right.
and they're very good like that. And they also realize that you're going to go somewhere else.
Right.
And when you go there, you're going to have Bloomberg again. So why piss off the person
Right.
that's going to ultimately find a job? And they let it go for like 6 months.
And in reality, it's not costing them anything.
It doesn't cost them a penny. And you can do it on your phone. I mean, I have, you can do it on your regular computer now. My husband makes fun of me. People come into my house, and my setup is in my living room. So when this whole COVID thing happened, my son Thomas is amazing. He's like, all right, Mom. He had me in the dining room, we had like a makeshift. I had this big old TV thing. I had my laptop, which was antiquated to begin with. I kept telling them, this is really not sufficient. Like, I'm crazy, like no one's talking about it. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I can't run Bloomberg, and I can't run my trading system at the same time. So what am I going to do? I need one, but so I put Bloomberg on my iPad, which is like insane, because I'm looking at all this other stuff. It's impossible to do with a little screen, and then I have my trading laptop. But then Thomas helped me. Internet was slow. We kind of did like a test. This was like the Monday, the week before everything kind of got shut down in the city. And I so I'll test it from home. We had a full desk in the city, like, just give it a shot, see how it works. Well, it didn't work. Everything was slow, it's delayed, slow internet. I'm like, this is not going to work. And I go back into the city, and I was trading a big buyback. And finally, the head of compliance was really hesitant about us. Because again, I'm in a highly regulated seat. Everything I'm doing, my phone, my computer, all my correspondence, the amount of money we trade. I mean, we could trade upwards of a couple $2 billion in a day. It's like an insane amount of money. And then, so I could understand the leash was really tight, but then they started to realize that COVID is actually really coming.
Mm-hmm.
So the Friday afternoon, they basically got a huge Suburban, and they put me in, I got a car home, and they basically took my entire workstation. So I have these 4, like, monster monitors in my house, the desk, and I can't even use it on a regular desk because the stuff is so heavy. I have it on like a wild cabana table, which is like this butcher block thing. It's from my first apartment. I mean, it's a hot mess, this table. I mean, it really is. But it's heavy, and it can support the weight of the desk, and it's wide. I need like width because the screen. I mean, other than that, the screens would be like right here. I wouldn't be able to sit. I wouldn't be able to write and keyboard. So, but people come into my living room and they see the screens when I'm sitting there. They're like, "Oh my God, what's like the command center." I mean, all these jokes, or you can see it from my back deck, and it's like sometimes it's like the dog's in there and something moves, the screen will light up, and it'll be like, and they're like, "The hell is going on over there?" But it's really kind of a funny thing. So people come in, the first thing they see are these monitors in my living room, and it really is kind of funny. I mean, it looks like fancy that it really is. Like I'm like, how do you look at all that stuff? Like I'm not looking at all the stuff. I mean, I have some things here and there, but it's like, it really is more like, I feel like it's almost like more show than, Yeah, but it's, so that's it. So, I mean, I don't know if I have what we covered. And then, so trading stocks, and just some recaps at the end of the day. Talk to clients.
Well, I know this session has 3:45, right? So 5 more minutes. Anything else? Any other questions, ladies?
Wait, so when do you go home?
Well, the good thing about working, so I'm in early, so I try to get, when I'm in the city, I really do try to get out of there by like 4:15, get just try to, I mean, that's kind of my goal. When I was running the desk, I had a lot of other responsibilities I'd have to stay late a couple of nights, like one night a week at least, or at least a couple of nights a month, just to like do things I couldn't do during trading hours. That is the one thing about COVID that has been a phenomenal thing, is that first of all, you have life balance, flexibility. So now I could trade all day. I can be totally exhausted. I'm like, all right, fine. I could go make dinner, and so any of the emails that like maybe I had to like do something or get some class, any of the organizations. I can get back to that later. So I'm going to be out today and tomorrow all day. So Sunday night after dinner, I may log onto my computer now, and I would never have done this beforehand, like get the laptop out. No, but now it's there in my living room. I'll clean out my whole inbox, organize myself, so when I wake up Monday morning, I'm like ready to go.
Right.
So it's actually really nice. So there's things where I'm thinking about, like I had to write an article for this newsletter, and I was like, all right. This one girl who just became a mother was really kind of focused on maternity policies, and I've already shared with you guys that I really didn't have a maternity policy when I worked in my first job. So it's like we're totally different, She used one word, which I'm going to ask you if you ever heard the term like outsourcing childcare?
No.
Correct, right?
No.
So she wrote this whole paragraph, and I know, and the paragraph talks about like maternity leave and how they should decrease it, and flexibility in COVID. And she goes, mothers outsourcing childcare, and I am, as I said, I'm pretty thick-skinned. I must agree that, and she's Ukrainian, so I can maybe give it to her that English is not her first language. But I read this thing over and over again. I said, I find this extremely insulting to a working mother on Wall Street. And I wasn't sure if it was just me, so I said it to like two of my friends. So I went back. I said, I would never use the term outsourcing my childcare. Right. I said it would be like finding a babysitter, a solution that works for you. But I never in a million years would I ever thought the term outsourcing my children. Would ever be used in a sentence.
Yeah.
Correct, right? All right, so that's.
Maybe this is the language barrier.
Correct. That's what I said. I'm hopeful it's language barrier. That's what I said. Man, I'll give it to her. I'm like, she's Ukrainian. There's a lot going on there in her family.
Childcare is like putting your child up for adoption.
Right?
One step below, I think. I don't know. It's interesting. I never heard of that before.
Right. And I do other stuff too. Linda knows I'm crazy. I coach a bunch of different sports. Mm-hmm. So you can do everything, but you just have to plan it. Yeah.
Right.
I think we'll end off on that
Yeah.
note.
Yeah.
You
Thank
can do
you.
everything, you just have to plan it. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you so much for
thank
taking
you
the
very
time
much.
to spend
Yeah.
with
Very nice
us.
to meet you guys.